No,
That's
really?
why we need to start the show earlier, because at this point, yeah, we're live.
Hmm.
And a full room too, pretty good. All right, so yep. Anyway, yeah, how you guys doing? How was the weekend?
Do I have something in my teeth?
My
Um,
weekend was
besides that, how was your weekend, Mike? Well, Josh
yeah,
figures out what's in his teeth.
it was okay. I mean, honestly, it's like getting past the Labor Day weekend. I mean, I'm like the opposite of everybody. It's like everybody is dreading the Labor Day weekend because it's the sort of end of summer and the kids are going to school, and I look forward. I mean, the kids going to school for parents, I'm sure, is a good thing because then they can get rid of them for half the day. But for
Yeah.
me, it's the beginning. It's the end of summer, and I'm not the biggest summer person, and it's the beginning of hockey season because now, we're a week or so away from rookie tournaments, a couple weeks away from training camp, about a month away from the regular season.
With
You
you.
have the NFL starting. All the sports are starting now, and this is my time of year. So I was glad that the weekend finally passed by, and now we can get moving.
I'm so with you. I am so. I mean, I'm ready. I am ready to. I mean, I hate the end of. I have a real um, hatred for the ends of anything. I just it's a weird OCD thing on my part. I hate the ends of things. Can you hear that sound?
No.
Vacuuming directly over my head. Um, okay, yeah. So there's a real hatred. I just hate the ends of things in general. So the end of summer and all that. I'm not. I'm bad with that kind of stuff. I'm like,
The end of a loaf of bread you hate?
end of anything. I don't close drawers. I'm very bad. It's really weird. There's a weird thing about me ending things. So yeah. But this is the one thing that when all is said and done, the kids are back at school today. That was crazy when you have kids for like the last 3 days. It was all about getting back to school. Like, and now they'll only do it 170 more times. But this one particular time is always hellish.
Yeah.
And but after that, after they get back to school, then you step back and you realize, okay, wait a second, I got some rumors to write about. I got some things to do. We got some camps to open and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. We did spend some time in Ocean City, New Jersey, and with my family down there. It was fun. The Ocean City Boardwalk is awesome. Still an awesome boardwalk. And yeah, we were down there and that's why we didn't have a show on Friday because, like I told you guys, the kids the kids got their homework done, which was totally unexpected because they were so far behind. But they read for 4 days, so that's why we didn't do a show on Friday. So, but we'll be doing shows. I can't think of the next time we'll be taking a break, guys. So we're here now for you, going on forward.
Until next July.
Till next July, at which time we'll just start doing other shows again or what have you. Yeah.
So Bovada has just released all the odds for
Oh, good.
the
Let's bring
Stanley
it up.
Cup.
Now, okay, Josh, I don't know if you can find this because I was talking to Eck about this, and we can do this closer to the regular season. Um, if I'm sure there's a betting line out there where they have over unders for points for different teams, like over under 92 points for the Maple Leafs, over or under whatever. There's over unders for these teams. We have to find those because I think a good contest for the season would be to maybe choose like 6 or 7 of those teams and keep track of them as we go through the season.
Mm-hmm. Well, right now I see odds to win the 2014 Central Division, to win the Pacific Pacific
It's just the
Pacific
odds.
Division,
It's not important. I'll see if I can find it.
Metropolitan Atlantic.
Let's start the show and then we'll get into this. Josh, we
Yeah,
can
yeah,
do this.
okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tuesday, September 2nd.
It's September, damn it. Thank God.
Have you guys ever put a wager on these kind of things with hockey?
No.
Or no?
I've never bet on hockey. I've never actually officially bet on a sport of any kind. I have bet. I've gambled, like in the casinos and stuff like that. But I've never bet on a sport. I have a friend who got really messed up betting on hockey. I have to say, it's one of the reasons we don't allow. I don't think we still allow. We haven't allowed gambling advertisements on HockeyBuzz, even though we can make a lot of money on them. I'm just not. I definitely am not a big fan of it. So, but that being said, Mike.
No, I was gonna say, I was in fantasy football for a number of years. I run a playoff hockey pool, which is fairly innocent. But I honestly, it's like I've become disenchanted with fantasy football over the years because I've become disenchanted with the NFL a little bit. But It's fun, but no, it's not Mr. High Roller here. So
Yeah.
let's get started.
Who's High Roller? Who's Mr. High Roller?
Josh, have you bet on hockey? I know in Canada it's legal and encouraged.
Well, I mean, they have something. They have something up here called Pro Line, which
Right.
you bet. But I never bet on hockey because I don't like the spreads or the odds.
Hockey's the worst to gamble.
I don't understand it. I'll do it on NFL. I used to do it on NFL all the time, but I find that I was losing more than winning.
This is a whole show we should do at some point. We really should.
They used to do hockey with goals and with football with points. They used to hockey with I remember Chicago minus 2.5 goals at home against Minnesota or something like that.
Right.
I don't think they don't do that anymore. Now it's just odds.
Yeah, right, exactly. And I mean, let's admit this sport it probably could be pretty good at betting on hockey. I'm actually very good at predicting games, as many of you may know. I'm going to challenge Mike and Josh this year to a year-long, we're going to pick one game a night and go with it and see where we go. But because I'm pretty good at that. But I think I'm good at it because I don't look at it logically. I think why I'm good at betting on hockey is it can't be looked at logically. You have to look at hockey. Remember my old X factors that I use, and I still believe in them firmly. That matters more, on the most part, than the actual games. The fact is on who's the better team. The team that has to win in hockey will win more often than not, and in the team that doesn't have to win. I mean, occasionally you get these streaks like Chicago and all, but that's so rare in hockey. There's more often big letdowns. And you can see the letdowns coming a mile away in hockey. It's a weird sport that way. It can really. So I don't know. At least I think you can. So we'll see who's better this year. Who's predicting this year? But I'm going to bet that I'm going to win that one.
I also need some help with my my keeper fantasy team. I have to decide if I should keep Marcus Johansson or Jacob Silfverberg. Who's going to have a better year?
Wow. Oh, I would say Johansson. Silfverberg could be on the top line, though. I know he could get a lot of time in Ottawa, but I don't know.
But Trotz, do you think Trotz is gonna change his style because he was a defensive coach in Nashville, but they really didn't have any superstars at forward.
I don't know.
Because if he changes his coaching style and becomes more offensive, Marcus Johansson could have a good year.
Yeah, I doubt he's gonna change his style. He's gonna go with what has worked for him in the past, even though he hasn't had playoff success. He didn't have the horses in Nashville to really get it done. Now I think he does have the horses, so I think he'll stick with what works.
Yeah, he's got to do that. All right, let's start the show here. Ready?
Yep.
I'm with you, Ryan Garner, in the chat room. Hockey is a sport of intangibles. That's why advanced stats don't work. Sort of. We'll talk about that more.
There's my man Ryan.
Yeah, Ryan, where's your pine? We're waiting for you. All right, here we go. Hello, Hockey World. It is Tuesday, September 2nd, 2014.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Josh Rimmer.
God, I hope you're listening and not watching the show. And I'm Eklund. And this is the HockeybuzzCast on HockeyBuzz.com, and we have made it to September. Woo! That was it's like running the marathon. We feel it. We've circled the wagons. We've gotten through the last turn, and now we only have another month without real games. But
camp starts in a couple weeks or a week.
Camp start, and that's something. And then we'll talk about all that stuff today, and we're going to talk also about odds today, which came out, and we're going to mention a bunch of different things. So we're going to get into probably gambling and hockey too, which is an interesting topic. But I wanted to first start today with rumors about camp invites, and I wrote a blog today that was, aptly titled, I think, the 8 best who have not yet been formally asked to the prom. And what's going on right now, and why there's so many players out there that haven't officially gotten invites. So far we've heard of invites, that I've heard of invites at least, from Simone Gagne, right, to going to Boston, and the Devils of all teams, who usually are incredibly secretive, 2 invites. They've got Gomez and Caberlet.
Right.
Which is awesome if it's 1998, and then we have and then what else officially? Officially, I couldn't find any others that I'd heard of. I mean, been away all weekend, but is there anything else, Mike or Josh, that officially?
Not officially. I mean, I only heard the speculation about Malone and Penner and
Yeah.
Alfredson with Detroit. I mean, he's still sort of in limbo. I mean,
Is that starting to get to be a weird situation? Like to me, that's starting to feel very strange. Like there's something else going on with the Alfredson situation.
and my suspicion is, and I until it doesn't happen, until he goes to Detroit, I'm going to be suspicious of this. The thing is, I don't, and I'm sure a lot of Detroit fans out there will disagree with me. I don't think Detroit is a realistic Stanley Cup contender. And the one thing that Daniel Alfredsson has not done in his career is win a Stanley Cup. So, where does he go? And I keep continuing to go back to a team like Boston, who lost Jerome McGinley. He doesn't have a lot of cap room, but he has a relationship with Chara, a relationship with Peter Chiarelli going back to Ottawa, and guys like Louis Eriksson on the team, who he probably played with Team Sweden. It adds up. So until that doesn't happen, until he's on the dotted line with Detroit, I'm going to be suspicious of that.
Yeah, I mean, at what point? I mean, Josh Alfredson wasn't a bad player last year.
No.
You're not talking about, and he still has so much to offer, you would think. And he didn't really try to sign with anybody else. I mean, he could have had people who offered him some things, and he didn't. So, what do you think's going on, Josh, with this?
I don't know. I mean, I think he's still contemplating whether or not he wants to play 100%. I mean, it seems every year it's almost like Matt Sundin all over again. Will he or won't he come back? And I think he's still not sold on the fact that he wants to play 100%. Detroit, I believe, are up against the cap, so I could see obviously why they would invite him, to camp instead of signing him prior to camp. And how much gas does he have left in the tank?
Well, I mean, one possible answer to this. I mean, it could very well be the case that Alfredsson and the Red Wings have an agreement in place, but the Red Wings still have Danny DeKeyser as a restricted free agent who they haven't signed. Mm-hmm. And if they lock up Alfredsson on a deal, they sort of limit their ability to fit DeKeyser in on a contract. They may be trying to get DeKeyser locked up long term, which might be more of a cap hit, and then they would have to fit Alfredsson in to whatever is left. Whereas if they do the opposite and sign Alfredsson, then they might not be able to get DeKeyser locked in for what is left. So I think the priority is a young defenseman like DeKeyser rather than a guy who's on probably his last year in Daniel Alfredsson.
You would think that, I agree, and you would think that Holland and Holland is usually such a GM that's so open with his players. So you would think that he would be the kind of GM who could go to Alfredsson and say that exact scenario. We're trying to get DeKeyser in. This is what we're trying to do. Da 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 da. And he would be that way. Jim Nill's the same way in Dallas with the players down there because he's of course a Holland guy. But it's starting. I've heard he does want to play. Like I've talked to people who say that there's no question he wants to play. He's working out. He does the off-season workouts the same as he always has. He's practicing with teams still. Ottawa was, if it's strange to me that he didn't go back to Ottawa at this point. Like with Ottawa needing, they would have welcomed him back, and they need centers in the worst possible way. It would make so much sense to go back to Ottawa and end his career, one more year in Ottawa.
I think that bridge is burned. Really think
it's bizarre how that. I mean, it's kind of lame if it's been burned because.
Well, I mean, in this way, I mean, don't get me wrong. When he retires, his number is going to be retired. He's going to be honored as a senator. Everything will. Nah, I really think that's the case. Unless the damage is just completely irreparable, and unless Eugene Melnyk can't stand him, then I think he'll still be honored because he's that franchise's signature player. I mean, I hate him. He's one of the most annoying players to play against as a fan, have that type of player play. But he's a great player and he's a Hall of Famer. To me, there's no doubt he is, and he's that franchise's signature player. So he's gonna. I mean, even if they do hate him, he's gonna be honored by that team. If they don't, I think it's a massive public relations nightmare for them.
But if that's the case, I mean, why why not bring him back? Like it's like if the is I don't know. It feels it's
Don't you
getting
think?
very dicey.
Don't you think the motivation for Alfredson is to win? Is to
Yeah,
win the
sure,
Stanley.
but if I mean, there's no. I guess we'll see what happens. If he ends up signing in Detroit, and this was all just a big,
Right.
he knew he was going to sign in Detroit, and then yeah, then fine. But if he doesn't sign in Detroit, or he retires, or what have you,
Yeah.
then I'm going to wonder, because that's to me, then that doesn't make sense.
If he signs in Detroit, I mean, Detroit is a competitive team. I don't think that they're good enough to win a Stanley Cup, but the Rangers got to the finals, and the Rangers at the beginning of the season, people didn't think the Rangers were going to get that far, so nothing is impossible. And so if he goes back there, he's got the comfort zone of playing with a lot of his countrymen. And he's playing with an organization he played with last year, so it's understandable. If he doesn't
Yeah.
go back to Detroit, then you would think that the determining factor would not be money, but would be fit. And if it's fit, it would be where he can win, because he hasn't won before.
Right.
That's why I keep going back to Boston. Maybe
Yeah.
Ottawa makes sense, but to me, Ottawa's more closer to the Connor McDavid sweepstakes than they
Oh,
are
yeah.
the playoffs.
Yeah, there's no question about that. There's no question about that. I totally agree with you.
Another guy who I'm shocked hasn't been signed yet, and maybe might be a camp invite, and I said his name a couple weeks ago, is Ray Whitney. I mean, I think even at 42 years of age, he can help a few teams out. Not only is he still got a lot of speed, but he's also a great leader and can help a locker room out quite a bit. So I wouldn't be surprised if Witt decides to go to camp on an invite. But the question is, what team would be the one inviting him?
Yeah.
Josh,
Go ahead.
would a team like Columbus be a fit?
I mean, he was there before.
Right.
I think anything's possible. I mean, for him to go there, I know he loved his time in Columbus. I think it's a possibility. But I could see other teams possibly inviting him as well. Maybe if Alfredson doesn't go to Detroit on a camp invite, maybe Ray Whitney goes to Detroit.
Yeah, he's been in Detroit before too. So
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
a team. Could it be a team like San Jose? I mean, he was in San Jose before. I mean,
Yes. Yeah, he's been everywhere. And he brings a lot. Last year he did slow down considerably quickly, but I think that's why he didn't. Obviously, this is the first year he hasn't gotten signed as UFA, right? So.
I mean, there's a connection in Carolina. I mean, with Jim Rutherford back to Carolina days, maybe Rutherford maybe brings Whitney to Pittsburgh.
That would make sense to me.
Yeah.
I did a lot of because he's the kind of guy I think the Penguins could use.
Mm-hmm.
But I haven't heard that directly. A couple things I did hear, however, on guys I was talking to. One of the more interesting players to talk about is Andre Laktianov, okay, whose middle name is like 25 letters long. I just found out today. I was trying to learn how to spell his name again, but his middle name is just insane. But so Laktianov, if you remember, was a big-time prospect for the Kings. Los Angeles Kings came in. He's only 24 years old right now. At this point in his life, he's only 24 years old, which is pretty crazy. He's a defenseman, a puck-moving defenseman for sure. And he got traded to the Devils, and the Devils really went for it with him, and they really had high hopes for Laktianov. And then again, the Devils, in their reclamation projects, usually works out for them, but this one didn't. They moved him to Carolina at the deadline last year, and then Laktianov went over and played in the Worlds where Russia won the Worlds in the summer, and hurt himself. Hurt his shoulder over there, and then a couple days later, Carolina didn't qualify him. So it's a crazy story. Mike, what are your thoughts on Laktianov?
Well, I mean, he's a classic tweener. I mean, he's sort of a guy like he's been highly regarded as a prospect with the Kings, as you said, but he never cracked their roster and stayed with them long term. He played. There were spots with the Devils where he played well, and then there was a disappearing act, and then they shipped him off to Carolina. I mean, he might be a guy who is a decent training camp invite, but I don't think he's anything more than a bottom 6 guy. And now the question of the injury situation. I mean, yes, he's 24, but he's already been with 3 teams by the age of 24, and a couple teams that usually hold on to players if they have any semblance of talent or work ethic. LA and New Jersey have passed on him, so I think it's going to be tough for him to find a job, and maybe he's a KHL candidate. And by the way, his last name, because the Russian names are always the the Ovich at the end of his father's first name was Vyacheslav, so his last name or his middle name is Vyacheslavovic.
Yes, Vyacheslavovic. Yes, exactly. So yeah, I know. I checked it. I mean, I think that the big noticeable thing about him is he's 24 years old as a defenseman. So I mean, usually 24-year-old puck-moving defenseman, someone will take a shot at. It's hard to imagine how he hasn't yet. Now, perhaps he's trying to get signed. And what's going on right now is a really big cat-and-mouse game, between teams not wanting to show who they're really bringing, to camps. I mean, the Flyers went out and said, I didn't know he was a forward. I'm sorry. I screwed that up. Why did I think he was a defenseman? Who am I confusing him with? Anyway, I apologize. There you go. Beginning of the year. But still 24-year-old Russian, right? So, I think that, what we're seeing now is we're seeing teams not willing to tip their hands on who they're inviting, and this, over the weekend we talked about this a little bit in my blog. Was mentioned that Bill Guerin, who had a tryout with the Flyers, and the Flyers denied that he was coming to a camp tryout until the day before he showed up at the camp tryout. Teams don't tip their hands on that, and players are still trying to get signed. They're still trying to get signed. So players won't tip their hand on where they're going as possible camp invites either. So.
Well, here's an indication, Eck. I mean, last year, middle of September was the Leafs rookie tournament in London, Ontario. The last day of the rookie tournament, I was in the press scrum with Dave Nonis, the Leafs GM, when he announced the tryout for Mason Raymond. It's the tryout until 2 days before their training camp. So they're not going to show their cards until the last possible moment when they absolutely have to.
Right. Right, no, I agree. Colorado, Tampa, and Pittsburgh are 3 teams that I heard are interested in Lockdown as a possible tryout. But like I said, teams are very, very tight on this right now. So, but Josh, go ahead.
Thing I find interesting is there's 5 pretty good goalies still who have not gone to a team, and I can't see because you don't really see goalies go to teams on a tryout basis. It doesn't happen too often, but Brodeur's still out there, Tim Thomas is still out there, Brizgalov's still out there, Habib Bulin's still out there, and Thomas Vokoun's still out there. Makes you wonder, are these 5 guys, basically the music stopped and there's no seats to sit in?
I think so. I think that's definitely the case. You have seen goalies sometimes, like Tim Thomas went last year on a tryout to Florida, but you don't see it as often as you do players, because by now you would think a team would have its goalie situation pretty much locked up. Mm-hmm. That's not the case with every team, though, and some teams still have battles for their backup spots going on, and we might see. Now, Brodeur's not going to go anywhere. He's going to pick his spot later in the year. I think it's pretty obvious now that Brodeur will join a team somewhere, in the middle of the season when a starting goalie goes down. I don't know I know Vokoun was trying to get signed, obviously, right? We've heard that he really wants to get signed, and he's apparently healthy, and when last he played was still a very good goalie. So Vokoun is a good one. Mike?
Well, the report, Darren Drager from TSN reported this morning that there might be a avenue for Brodeur to go back to the Devils.
I've heard that too, but I just don't see it. I've talked to people about that left and right. I've talked to people about that for weeks now, and there might be an avenue for him to go back to the Devils. But and I think that Lou Lamoriello, if Marty decided he wanted to go back, would let him come back. But I think the fact of the matter is, Marty still believes he's a starting goalie and still wants to be at least competing for that spot. And the Devils will not bring him in on that kind of thing. They will bring him in as you are the backup, and that you're the backup.
Right, but the thing that he reiterated and has been talked about for months is the fact that he's a free agent, and he's a proud dad, and his son is playing for Oshawa in the OHL.
Yep.
and that he might be in the Toronto area to sort of take care of his son and to watch over him while he's playing his first OHL season. I think it's his first OHL season, and if that's the case, that's going to inevitably lead to the speculation regarding Toronto with Shanahan and the relationship with him and Shanahan I've had over the years. Until the Reimer situation is straightened out, if there's a trade, then Berger becomes a possibility. But I just haven't heard anything about Reimer in the last, say, month or so, and I really don't think there's any there right now.
Yeah, not right now. I agree with that. I think that I think Tim Thomas will have a tough time finding a spot, but I do think he could still end up on a team if injuries happen and stuff like that. I just can't help but see Brodeur as like a Flyer or a Ranger or something like that. If Mason goes down or Lundqvist goes down, that then he can still live where he lives, basically, be in the area.
An Islander.
Yeah, I think a Flyer or Rangers are more likely. I do think he wants to go someplace where he's got not that the Islanders don't have a shot at winning the Stanley Cup, but I think that they're still a little bit further away than the other teams. But that's just my opinion. Billy Leno is another one that that I was tracking, and it's easy to dish on Billy Leno because it's two horrible seasons in Buffalo. I mean, or 3 horrible seasons in Buffalo, right? Was it 3?
I'll check.
It was endless. It seems endless.
Yeah, I think it's 3.
3 complete horrible seasons. in
Let's just say Buffalo Sabres fans have blanked it out of their memory, so they don't remember it at all.
Exactly, but it's not for people like me who were always Leno supporters. Remember that Leno was a great line mate to Claude Giroux in Philadelphia, and also thinking about the fact that Giroux has lost his line mate in Hartnell. It was 3 years.
Still a little shocked over that, but
yeah, but now Giroux is looking. He's with Voracek right now. Still, of course, because Voracek and Giroux are a team. But right now, that other side, you're hearing, who that's going to be. Rumors about is it going to be this guy? Is it going to be that guy? If Leno showed up at a rookie on a tryout in the Flyers, I think that he would have a good shot at winning that spot back because his connections are so strong there. Mm-hmm. If he is healthy, of course, and that's always a big thing with Billy Leno. But he's not the only team, and San Jose is another one that that has interest in Billy Leno too. And I do believe he will either sign with somebody or get a camp tryout. But I still think there's a chance he could sign with somebody. He's, but I think that Philly's a good spot for him. If I was the Flyers, I would definitely give him a shot because there were good things here. Billy was, one of the best playoff performers for this team. And he doesn't have to play center here. There's a lot of options for him here that are a lot better than Buffalo. So we'll see about that. But Sammy Salo is another one that I mentioned. Sammy
is he healthy enough though?
What was that?
Is he healthy enough though?
You hear different things, but I've heard he is healthy enough to play. And I know he was skating over the weekend. I heard so. He turns 40 today.
Well. Happy birthday, Sammy.
Yes, Sammy.
Where is he? The infirmary?
He's in Tampa still, working out down there.
And speaking of celebratory congratulations, quick congratulations to Carrie Underwood and Mike Fisher on their upcoming baby. But anyway, go ahead.
Yes, an Underwood Fisher baby. That'll be something.
There you go.
It'll be I'm not gonna make my own jokes there.
Yeah, I was gonna say something, but I'll hold back.
But let's talk about Henrik Telinder too. Like Telinder, another Sabre, Mike, who's out there right now. And the thing about Telinder is this, he's obviously slowed down a little bit.
There's a lot of former Sabres out there.
There's a lot of former Sabres out there right now. That's for sure.
Must be something.
Something in the water. No, but the other thing that really interests me with Telinder is that. It's rare to find a player with as much respect for him as people have for Henrik Telinder, and especially Swedish players, which is why the Detroit rumors that I was hearing over the weekend made sense. Like Detroit, has the Swedish players there, obviously. If Albertson's returning, we don't know, but beyond Albertson, there's plenty there, in Zetterberg and the whole 9 yards, right? So, the idea here of Telinder fitting in with the Red Wings is kind of is not too bad. I mean, that's the Red Wings. Remember, they tried to get a couple defensemen, didn't get them as free agents. Tallinder could step in here. What are your thoughts on Tallinder, Mike?
Well, I mean, he did slow down a little bit with the Sabres last year. I mean, the funny thing is that he was here for Tyler Myers' rookie season, and he really helped him out as a rookie, being sort of that steadying influence on the blue line, and allowed Myers to, be more of a freewheeling offensive guy, and that led to him winning the Calder Trophy. I think they brought him back last year because Myers had not been able to really find a successful partner on defense since Tallinder. Didn't really work last year. I mean, I think he's still an NHL player. He's not going to be making as much money as he did with the big contract he signed with the Devils as a free agent. Detroit makes sense. I mean, I think he still has enough left in the tank that he could be an effective bottom pairing defenseman. And I agree with your what you just said about his respect, because there's a lot of respect for him. He's a quality guy and a quality defenseman still, but I think he's starting to lose some speed, and anything more than a bottom six role would be a stretch. But a team like Detroit, a team that needs an extra defenseman. I mean, I mentioned, and we'll probably talk about this later, I think the Leafs are looking for a seventh defenseman, a veteran guy, and they have a lot of Swedish defensemen in the pipeline, and I'm sure Tallinder is somebody that they're all well aware of. So that it might be beneficial for them to bring in a guy like that as a seventh defenseman, and sort of almost like an assistant coach in a way as well.
Yeah. And along those lines is Douglas Murray, another Swedish defenseman who's not signed, who I actually thought was really good for Montreal last year in the playoffs and the time he played. People know I had issues with Danny Brière's playing time in the playoffs, but Doug Murray was another one of them that I also had issues with, because he was very good early on, and then and was really good at helping Montreal shut down teams, and then when Price went down, they kind of took Murray out of the picture. He is a gritty guy, obviously. Tons of grit. Is a tough guy. He's another. I've heard the Calgary Flames interest in him, which would make total sense to me. He's that team. If someone told me he'd signed in Calgary tomorrow, I wouldn't be surprised. Red Wings the same thing again. If you're looking at Tallinder or Murray, you're looking at two Swedish defensemen, very kind of different defensemen, but depends on what you want, I guess. The Senators also have interest in Douglas Murray, as do the Kings, and I thought the Kings was an interesting one. This is the first time I had heard about the Kings this morning when I talked to somebody out in LA who said that he had heard Douglas Murray was on their radar as a camp invitee. The Kings they do have a lot going on, but at the same time they're very familiar with Murray, having played in San Jose all those years, and there's a lot of respect for him apparently in that organization.
And right now they're penciled in as their sixth defenseman is probably Braden McNabb, and he's a young guy. They got him from Buffalo. They don't really know whether he's capable of handling that job. I think they're going to give it a chance, but they lost Willie Mitchell in free agency, and a veteran like Murray. I mean, the thing is, Murray makes Dave Anderchuk look like a speed skater.
Right. No, Murray's not best, but he's not terrible.
Yeah, he is a fire hydrant. He is a statue out there in terms of speed. But again, if it's somebody who's going to play 10, 12 minutes a night as a sixth defenseman, as a veteran guy who can play positionally sound and not take a lot of risks, then maybe he can work out. In a defensive system like the LA Kings, you can cover up. But the thing is, they have guys like Robin Regehr already, and he's losing speed too. You're going to put too much of a burden on guys like Voyanov and Doughty and Muzzin to have another slow, older guy back on the defense.
Yeah, but look at it this way. Killing penalties, okay, in the Western Conference is a really tough thing to do. Douglas Murray, that's his specialty. He's ice. You can throw him in front of the net. He will let Jonathan Quick see everything. He's that kind of guy, and there aren't that many of them left. So that's my thought on Josh. Any thoughts on the Murray?
Not on Murray, but I just want to let you know while you guys were talking here, I had talking to a couple of free agents out there, former Leaf, Devils, and Oilers defenseman Mark Frazier. is talking to a number of teams right now. He said nothing to report yet. I asked him about a camp invite if that was a possibility, and he said he hopes to have a deal done before camp starts. So obviously, first choice for most guys would be a deal before a camp invite. A lot of guys, I guess, if you will, they feel insulted when they go on a camp tryout, but some guys are willing to do that in order to battle for a job. Also spoke with Jordan Tutu. He still has not decided on what he's going to do. Maybe a guy like Jordan Tutu, I could see a guy like that maybe going the AHL route to try to win a job that way. Obviously, toughness. Toughness is great, but a lot of teams don't really look at tough guys as much as they did in the past. So maybe Tutu, maybe AHL deal possible.
I would like to see him in like Phoenix or something like that. I think a place where he could actually go and a town that needs him. Like, he's such a great inspirational type player, and he really rallies fan bases and stuff like that. I think that I would like to see him in Phoenix. I would like to see him in Florida, perhaps. He
just texted me again saying that he's training hard and he's preparing himself to be ready. So
yeah.
This is the common thing. Like, I was talking to some players over the weekend. Same thing, Josh. It's like they all expect to get a deal done. That's what their agents are working on right now, and that's what their agents are telling them too. We're going to try to get a deal done. Right,
and right now, the next 2 weeks is a game of chicken between the agents and between the players and the teams. And it may not even be for a one-way contract or a contract. I know, again, going back to the Mason Raymond scenario, last year he signed for $1 million. You'd think that a guy who signed a tryout contract agreement with the Leafs, eventually he would have been signed for, say, $550,000 or $600,000. But they wanted him enough, and they may have negotiated before he even got the tryout. Okay, if we sign you, this is what you're going to get. So these agents might be negotiating with these teams for terms. They will invite them on a tryout basis, but they will negotiate the terms before they even agree to come in on a tryout basis.
Right, and that's common. And also, a lot of these guys that I talked to, and I would bet it was the case with the two guys you talked to this morning, Josh, as well, are looking at there are two-way offers, two-way contracts out there that they could jump on right now, and they're not willing to do that. Because if they go to a camp tryout, they may have a chance of getting a one-way deal. That also plays into it. You don't see many contracts signed in September between now and the beginning of camp. This is the time when, even though everybody's hoping to get a contract signed, it's pretty rare.
Right.
Because of that, you'll see some two-way contracts signed once camp starts. They might get to camp and they might be impressive enough, and then like the team enough and see what's around and say, okay, maybe I'll sign a two-way contract with this team now, but not yet,
Yeah, but the thing is, Zach, and I think that the late signings are increasingly becoming more one way because these teams can bury a contract for under $925,000 in the American Hockey League, and it makes it more likely that if it's a tweener, a guy who's like a fourth line guy, other teams don't want to pick up a one-way contract on waivers. And the Leafs picked up Jared Smithson last year, and he was a one-way deal, and he went freely back and down between the Leafs and the Toronto Marlies because he was on a one-way deal and because he wasn't, he was a borderline player. But, that increases the chances of him being able to be kept in the organization because nobody wants to claim a one-way deal.
Right. No, it makes complete sense, and that's. There's some goalies who I know a couple of the goalies who have two-way possibilities too that won't do it. They just won't do it yet. But we'll see. That everything changes. It is a big game of chicken, as you said, Mike, and everything changes the closer we get to the season because players want to keep playing, and at the end of the day, that's what matters, right? So that's something. Okay, so like another guy I was looking at is Derek Morris, who is another defenseman, and I think a right-handed shot, if I remember right. Isn't he a right-handed shot off the point?
I believe so.
I think so. Yes. And he's he's a 36-year-old. He's only 36, which I thought was kind of young for. I think feels like Derek Morris has been in the league forever to me, but he's only 36. He's quite a journeyman. He's been on a lot of teams. He's been written about, I think, every year since I started Hockey Buzz as far as rumors in the summer goes.
Oh,
Josh?
I just got some news here, and I think this is news. Shane O'Brien said he's going to the Florida Panthers on a PTO. Is that new?
I haven't heard of that.
I haven't heard that one, so yeah.
Hmm.
Well,
All right.
Yeah, I mean that's a big
Thanks, Shane.
yeah. He's
uh,
watching the show. Yeah, I think that's pretty cool. I think that I like Shane O'Brien. That's another good pick. I mean, Florida. That's a
they
great.
got a lot of tough guys on the team, don't they?
Florida's not an easy team to play against. No, they're
I mean,
they're putting
they
together a
signed
really.
three tough guys in the offseason, did they not? Sean
Oh
Thornton.
yeah. Did you see the picture of Sean Thornton skating in Boston?
No.
Oh, this is a riot because I'll show you this. They have this here on my. I think I can show the screen share thing and see if I have.
Who else did they sign? They signed 2 other tough guys, didn't they, this offseason?
Yeah, they did. So here's
Brandon Peary was still under contract. Darren McKenzie.
Yeah, tough guy. And there was another one.
And Willie Mitchell.
Maybe I had Bolin in that category.
I mean, Bolin's a feisty guy, but he's not like he's not going to fight anybody. He's
here's Thornton, right? And Boston has this thing. They typically have this, skate for pros, and it's not uncommon for in Buffalo. A lot of guys like Patrick Kane still would skate in Buffalo in the summer, and it's not uncommon for the teams to open up to any NHL player to come by and we're open if you want to skate here. So, but in Boston, all the Boston Bruins were basically out there skating, and Thornton was out there skating, but he was wearing his Florida Panthers gear, which is pretty funny. As you can see, they're just skating out there which was a big deal because Thornton was such a big player. Big fan favorite in Boston. That's got to be a painful thing for Bruins fans.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he didn't want to leave. I mean, if the Bruins would have wanted to bring him back, but I mean, honestly, back with their cap situation, I don't think they could have brought him back unless he was willing to take league minimum. I mean, with the Iginla bonus situation in Boston, really handcuffed them.
Yeah.
And they still have Krug. And they still have Riley Smith unsigned, so Peter Chiarelli has a big dilemma right now of how to get those guys signed. They're going to have cap room open up when they can put Mark Savard's contract on LTIR, but still they're not going to have much money. I think it's less than $4 million to get both of those guys under contract.
Yeah, no, I agree, and there's a lot of I mean, you're talking about a lot of money spent in Boston, and when I see Gagne and I see other people coming in there, and you talk about Alfredsson, yeah, I mean Boston, how are they going to figure out Alfredsson? They really have hardly any space at all. They're in a really bad spot.
And I don't know how much credibility these rumors over the weekend, because they popped up off and on about a Johnny Boychuk Nail Yakupov deal between the Bruins and the Oilers. I don't know where they came from. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it would make sense from the Edmonton perspective because Boychuk is a top solid, tough defenseman. Played with Andrew Ference in Boston, sometimes on the same pairing, sometimes not.
Yeah.
And Yakupov has, after an okay rookie season, sort of took a step back, and there's still a lot of questions about his relationship with Dallas Eakins. So, I mean, it might make sense.
No, there's no question. It's not a good relationship.
Right. Boychuk is making over $3 million, and Yakupov is on the last year of his entry-level deal, so it would open up almost $3 million in cap space for them to bring in either another defenseman or another forward, so it would loosen things up a bit.
Trying to picture, the Boston coaching team with Yakupov though is another hard thing to think of. There's some Claude Julien and Yakupov together. I mean, I think Yakupov is, we're gonna see this year with Gagne in Phoenix, right? We're gonna see what the Edmonton situation was for these guys who escaped the Edmonton situation, and Sam Gagne was a big time star. Before they got all those first-round draft picks, right? He was going to be the guy, and then him and Coliano, basically are both gone, and they were the next ones in Edmonton back then.
Yes, the prototype of the small, talented Edmonton forward, which they just drafted more of.
Gilbert Brule. They drafted a bunch of them, so they had a bunch of them. So they were all there, right?
Yeah.
And none of them worked out for them at all. And then they went and got more of them, like you said. So I wonder with that, like I don't know. I don't see. Boychuk is a great fit, but Yakupov could have a good. It would be good to see Yakupov get a fresh start somewhere else for sure.
Well, the interesting thing that came up over the last few days was the signing of Justin Schultz, a one-year deal for I think it was $3.6 million.
Yeah.
And I know that there's a lot of chatter now going on about other defensemen like DeKaiser, who we mentioned before, and Tyson Berry, who are restricted free agents, and how that contract has thrown everything into a kerfuffle. I mean, it's just like right. All these guys now think they can get $3.6 million because Justin Schultz, who at this point, in my eyes, is a flawed player because he's really good offensively, but defensively he's a train wreck.
I still think the worst defensive defenseman in the NHL. That's my opinion.
Yeah, it makes Jake Gardner look like Dennis Potvin.
Oh yeah. I mean, if there was a 0 for defense in Stratomatic, Justin Schultz would be a 0. He gives away the puck easily as often as he creates scoring opportunities. Yeah. So he's one of those guys. I just don't think he's a defenseman. I think that he's a forward, and but when he was coming up, someone put him on defense. Like, that guy can play defense, and then he had success because he was so talented.
Right.
But I don't see him. I still don't see him as a forward.
Agreed.
I mean, I want to see I don't know. I want to see what Yakupov can do. I do. I still think there's a lot of revisionist history on the Ryan Murray Yakupov thing with Columbus and Edmonton. I was listening over the weekend. Like Columbus wanted Yakupov. Let's not say they didn't want Yakupov, because Columbus did want Yakupov. I mean, Josh, you remember this whole thing as it went down and.
Oh yeah.
Now, to me,
he's going to be a bust. I honestly believe he's going to be a bust. I mean, but to be honest with you, Nugent Hopkins hasn't really.
Yeah, that's about right for Nugent Hopkins. He hasn't really.
We'll wait to him for him to unfreeze. But
right, but I think Nugent Hopkins has been better than Yakupov, and I think that Nugent Hopkins. It's just obviously a more talented player. We've seen Nugent Hopkins in the World Juniors. We've seen him in situations where he's obviously got a hell of a lot of talent.
Oh,
there goes Josh.
Josh will be back. He just dropped off.
Yeah, but Nugent Hopkins. I mean, Yakupov has talent. He's a it is kind of like it is interesting how people are calling him the Russian Alexander Daigle.
Yes, I've heard that,
but not too off right now. I mean. That being said, everyone's like, Edmonton wanted to draft Ryan Murray and all this stuff you hear about, all this crap, right? I just don't buy it. At the time when I was talking to people, right. Columbus wanted Yakupov in the worst possible way, and Edmonton wanted Yakupov. That's okay.
Sorry, guys. There's a bad rainstorm here right now. I wonder if that had anything to do with it.
Probably did have something. It was very funny what you said. It was just the way you froze. Is you're like, to be fair, Ryan Nugent Hopkins hasn't, and you froze right there, which was perfect.
Well, I mean, what I was saying was he hasn't excited me at all either. I mean, if you look at what he's done, injury-wise, I think Taylor Hall obviously took a big step finally this past season. Eberle's kind of been there. He showed me a little bit more than Nugent Hopkins has, but I'd like to see a little bit out of Nugent Hopkins and Yakupov, but maybe Nugent Hopkins has a better year this year, or maybe they just got to trade one of those guys.
Well, the funny thing is of that 2012 draft, I think that the players who have disappointed the most with the expectations that prior to the draft are Yakupov and his Russian counterpart Mikhail Grigorenko. Grigorenko was supposed to be a top 5 pick, and then he fell off the table. Buffalo drafted him, I think, 12th, and he's been a disaster so far in his first 2 years. I mean, Yakupov, he had a good first year. His second year was a struggle. He's got talent. I just don't think he's a good fit with that organization because they have too many of the same player.
Well, there's only, as you know, I've had, friends who are hockey players tell me many times over there's only so much puck to go around, and this is a big thing, in Edmonton. There's only so much puck to go around. You've got a lot of guys who want to carry the puck up the ice, and that doesn't work. You have to have players who are going to carry the puck up the ice, players who are going to go into the corners, players who are going to finish. You need all this stuff, but if you have too many players who want the puck all the time, that was the problem with Van Riemsdyk in Philadelphia, and people forget that the Flyers had so many guys in Philadelphia who could carry the puck, and it wasn't. When JVR was allowed to be the guy who carried the puck, he was incredibly successful, but quite often he wasn't allowed to be the guy who carried the puck.
Yeah, and
in Toronto he does.
And he's done that in Toronto a lot. He's because he's very quick for a guy of his size, and actually I think he's very quick for a guy of any size. And it's a little intimidating, even though he's not an extremely physical player. That you got a 6'4" guy flying down the wing. It's tough to stop.
No, and he's gotten way meaner in time too. He was not nearly as nasty, and I think them not making the Olympic team back in Vancouver, when Brian Burke and Paul Holmgren basically said to him, "You're not, you're a country club kid. You're not nasty enough. You don't go to the front of the net. You don't score ugly goals." I think that really had an impact on him and made him a much better player. He took that to heart. In a lot of ways, JVR and Bobby Ryan remind me of each other. Mm-hmm. And I mean, not just from being Jersey kids and being high draft picks as Jersey kids, both taken second overall, but they've had a similar background. They both grew up, with somewhat of affluence. They both had this reputation that they were a little bit country clubbish. They weren't farm kids from Canada, so they just had a whole different, But I think that when you look at Bobby Ryan too, I was looking at Bobby Ryan's stats over the weekend, and my gosh, that guy. There's very few players that have scored 30 goals in as many seasons as Bobby Ryan has over the last several years. I mean, he really is I don't think there's many at all. So we got to see what happens with I think Bobby Ryan's going to be a fun one to watch this year.
Speaking of Bobby Ryan, guys, there was something that came up about Bobby Ryan here as we started the podcast, and I didn't bring it up, but apparently there's an article by the Toronto Sun that was posted that Bobby Ryan is healthy and he hits town preparing for Senators camp, expecting to have a better season, obviously, than he did last year. That's a good little...
I talked to Bobby, and I can tell you that's absolutely the case. He's really healthy. He's really together, and he was hurt from basically mid-January on last year, and a lot of that had to do. I still think the Olympic thing was kind of under-publicized. The fact that he was hurt, that had more to do with it than people realized, him not going. But yeah, he still would have liked an invite and probably been told he couldn't go because he was injured. Josh?
Now, one thing I'd like to add, and it's in this article, Ryan talks about, really doesn't talk a lot about it, but said that there's no update in contract talks with the team. He's going to be an unrestricted free agent, as you guys pointed out. But he reiterated that he wants to stay in Ottawa. Now, my question to you guys is, we've heard guys, be politically correct and say they want to stay in their city, but we've seen a lot of players of late that haven't wanted to go and play in Canada. I mean, does Bobby want to stay in Ottawa? He says everything has been amicable. Nobody has told me much. I'm just waiting to hear.
Bobby's really honest, so I think he's saying that he probably does mean it. He doesn't really lend information very often, or at all. I think that he's not a spinster type guy. He doesn't really have any reason to spin it. He did love it. He loved it. He loved playing in a hockey city. He loved Ottawa is quite the hockey town. He loved that part, Mike.
And I'm not saying he doesn't mean it, but what it entails is whether Eugene Melnyk will open up the pocketbook and pay him. Now,
right, and this is his big payday. I mean, this is Bobby Ryan's big contract. So,
right. And in all rights, he probably should be the top paid forward on that team. I mean, now that Spets is gone, they re-signed Clark MacArthur.
Top paid forward on that team, Mike, I think, isn't he? I mean, I don't think.
I mean, but I'm saying like he, based on his, his record, he should be over a $6 million player. If Clark MacArthur is making $4.25 million, they re-signed Craig Anderson to a deal. If you're going to sign Bobby Ryan, who's what, 25, 26? He's the same age as Crosby, so it's 28. It was 2005 draft.
Yep.
So. This is probably his, he's got to make his money now. This is deal. He needs to probably get a 6-7 year deal at over $6 million, and I'm not convinced Eugene Melnick will pay that much. We'll see, but I'm
No,
not.
and I think both the Flyers and the Rangers are waiting on this one, and I think they both really want Bobby Ryan in the worst possible way. I mean, you hear of all sorts of things about this in Philadelphia, whether or not they really want Bobby Ryan, but there's so many angles to this right now that it's just I think he if he can get the right contract to stay in Ottawa, I think he doesn't mind staying in Ottawa at all. It's a great hockey town, and he loved it, and I don't see anything changing that. But I think you're right, Mike. It's going to have to be a very big contract. They're going to have to overpay him to get him to stay there.
Right.
And because this is his shot. I mean, this is a guy who was on the rumor. If you remember, he was in the rumor mill almost all the time in Anaheim.
Right.
And in Ottawa, this is going to be another year where he's on the rumor mill. You can tell, the guy's going to want to sign a no movement clause, big contract where he wants to be next.
Right.
That's just there's no doubt about that.
And I honestly, I don't see him if he's dealt. This is not a deadline deal. This is a deal that's made like December, January.
Yeah.
Because Ottawa will determine by the middle of the season whether they're in contention
around Thanksgiving.
Whether in the Connor McDavid sweepstakes. And if they're going down, then they'll trade him and get what they can for him, and sort of bottom out.
Yeah, I agree. American Thanksgiving, not Canadian Thanksgiving, because you guys have Thanksgiving way too early. But American Thanksgiving, you'll see trades.
I don't even celebrate it, to be honest with you, but
you're not thankful for anything, are you, Josh?
No, I mean, we're celebrating it in October before Halloween.
Yeah, no, that's ridiculous. That's all the time we have for today. Josh, you got something else,
to odds. We never got to odds.
Let's save it for tomorrow.
I know, we're going to save it for tomorrow. Yeah. 2 o'clock already. It was a quick 45 minutes here that we were on the air.
That's fine.
And so we're gonna save the odds for tomorrow. We also have the Forecrester magazine we're gonna be looking into this week, perhaps tomorrow as well. And we're gonna start seeing these things like O'Brien. Good job breaking that, Josh. And we're gonna see more stuff as that goes along. That kind of stuff goes along this week. And remember one thing about camp invites is they can also change. Like if someone gets invited to a camp, there is nothing signed. This is not a contract. A guy gets invited and suddenly another team sees he's invited and wants to sign him or wants to invite him as well.
And if it's a better opportunity and there's more, not as much on the depth chart as a different team. Didn't that happen 2 years ago? And I just want to say this really quickly. It was a defenseman, I remember, because he played against the Toronto Maple Leafs. And right before the game started, he got notified that he signed with the Detroit Red Wings, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Or he was playing for the Detroit Red Wings on a PTO, and then he left the Red Wings to another team. Defenseman, played with the Islanders. What's his name? It's going to drive me nuts now.
I'll find it after the show.
Sopel? Brent Sopel, I think it was.
Yeah. Well, I was one time at a Flyers tryout with when Brian Berard was there, and in the middle of the tryout, in the middle of practice, he left. He just got invited to another tryout that he decided he would have a better shot. I forget what it was, but there's nothing to keep these players in there, at all. This is completely. There's no contracts. This is just about. They're literally as free agents can be, So.
You know what? It was Detroit. He was playing with Detroit on a tryout, and then he ended up signing with Chicago. And ended up leaving before the game started. It was quite funny.
Yeah, no, it happens a lot. It happens a lot. It does. And I think Bill Guerin, when he was in Philadelphia, might have gone to another team to try out as well. So you can see guys play on different teams in the preseason. It's they're literally just they're not making any money. They're not getting paid at all. So they're just out there. They're doing their thing, and they don't owe anything to anybody. So there you have it. Like Ryan Garner says, the Sharks used to invite Jeff Reason to camp every year and never kept him. That's pretty true. He was a good player at one point. Anyway, we'll get back to other things tomorrow. But thanks again for watching us. And remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We'll talk to you soon.